Now, you might be thinking, well, she doesn't have any enforcement power as the czar of the Disinformation Governance Board. Even Mayorkas admits that she doesn't have the power to actually censor you. She's not big sister in a sense. Well, she is, though. Mayorkas is not being completely honest about this. And this is revealed because he knows that this is a very unpopular opinion. He knows that this is backfiring on the Biden administration. He knows that people think that this Disinformation Governance Board is creepy, because it is really creepy. So he made the rounds on the Sunday morning shows to defend Nina Jankowicz. Guess she couldn't defend herself. And he's the one who vocalized what Nina Jankowicz vocalized in her book, that our words could possibly be construed as a threat to national security.
Let's talk about a different topic, which is what you are calling, your department is calling the Disinformation Governance Board. You unveiled that this week. Republicans are calling it Orwellian and comparing it to the Ministry of Truth in the novel 1984. Can you clarify what exactly is this? What exactly will this Disinformation Governance Board do? Will it monitor American citizens?
Dan, I'm very pleased to do so. It's clear. I mean, those criticisms are precisely the opposite of what this small working group within the Department of Homeland Security will do. And I think we probably could have done a better job of communicating what it does and does not do. So the fact is that disinformation that creates a threat to the security of the homeland is our responsibility to address. And this department has been addressing it for years, throughout the years of the prior administration, and an ongoing basis. Disinformation from Russia,
right.
China.
We know
Iran.
the problems, but it's still not clear to me how this governance board will act. What will it do?
So what it does is it works to ensure that the way in which we address threats, the connectivity between threats and acts of violence are addressed without infringing on free speech, protecting civil rights and civil liberties, the right of privacy. And the board, this working group, internal working group, will draw from best practices and communicate those best practices to the operators, because the board does not have operational authority.
Will American citizens be monitored?
No.
Guarantee that.
Well, so what we do, we in the Department of...
So he vocalizes what Nina Jankowicz says in her book, that disinformation can be a threat to democracy. What is disinformation? Define it, Mayorkas. Tell us what disinformation is. There better be really strict standards of what you're talking about. If you're using the government to enforce the idea that disinformation is such a threat to our democracy that it must be censored. Bret Baier asked Mayorkas for this definition of disinformation, and his response was unsatisfactory.
Was the Steele dossier disinformation?
It's not for me to opine on that.
You know, Americans are general.
Dude, if you can't even define the fact, if you can't even acknowledge the fact the Steele dossier was the actual definition of disinformation, the actual definition of lies compiled to slander the character of a political opponent of Hillary Clinton, a political opponent of Barack Obama. It was weaponized and used to try to take down a duly elected president. If you can't define that, are you kidding me? That you're going to try to define online speech coming from conservatives as disinformation? This is so dangerous. So go back to the first clip for a second. So what does Mayorkas say is the role of this Disinformation Governance Board? He said the role is to disseminate best practices. Well, what are best practices? What are best practices? Can you define that? He doesn't define that, but he does tell us exactly where Nina Jankowicz's power, where her enforcement mechanism lies. He says, disseminate best practices to operators. Well, who are operators? Operators like Facebook, like Twitter, like Google? Because we know Jen Psaki's already told us that the federal government, the White House, meets with big tech and tells them what to censor, what information is dangerous, what's COVID disinformation, what is inciting an insurrection. We know that the White House is actively involved with telling big tech what they should censor. And that's the enforcement mechanism of Nina Jankowicz on the Disinformation Board. Mayorkas admits this. And when Mayorkas is asked, well, in order to even consider this idea, I mean, Nina Jankowicz is a partisan. She's a very far leftist. She's admitted this. And Mayorkas denies this.
Republicans are criticizing your decision, the administration's decision to choose Nina Jankowicz to lead this disinformation board. They say she is not somebody who is neutral. Your response?
Eminently qualified, a renowned expert in the field of disinformation. Absolutely so.
Oh, she's neutral. Neutral. No. I mean, this is patently unbelievable to anybody who has a shred of common sense. Nina Jankowicz is obviously far left. I mean, you can read her book like we just did together, and you can see that she is very far left, that the policies she supports are very far left, that she wants to stifle free speech. She also advocated for government to lock us down during the COVID outbreak because she said that Americans are, quote, too free-spirited to make the right decision themselves. She is a radical leftist Democrat, and this is obvious to anyone. It's obvious to everyone. This you don't even have to be politically involved for this to be very obvious.